Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed.
What is going on, everybody? It's your man, Immanuel, and we are back for another episode of Why We Succeed. Today, I am joined by a very, very special guest, the one and only Dr. Nikki, the female money doctor. What is going on?
Oh my God, what an introduction. Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be talking to you today.
Oh man, it is an honor, Nikki. I am super excited to have you on the show. I want to get into not only your journey as an entrepreneur, but what it means to be a female money doctor, how you've been helping the ladies get their finances together. I know we're going to dive deep into that, but I always like to start with one simple question for all of my guests, which is, how do you define success?
Oh, okay. So this has changed. This has changed, right? So when I was younger, I used to think that being successful was having loads of money, having, a big house, and, everyone could see that you had money. And that's what I thought success was, right?
Yes.
As I've got older, I think I've realized that actually having time is success. So I love working from home. I love working on my business. And for me, it's more about time than it is about money. So yes, I probably could earn a lot more by doing other things, but that's not important to me. I've got what I want, and I'm in a very happy relationship with my husband. So that to me is success. It's time, experiences, spending, having time to actually do the things you want to do.
I love that. And I kind of picked up on when you were first pondering the question that there have been a shift between how you view success now and the way that you used to view it. And I'm curious, was there a particular event or catalyst that sparked that change?
I think it's just with maturity. I mean, when I was younger, I wouldn't say no to anything. So I wanted to do it all, have it all at once, all at the same time. And it got me into big problems with debt. Because I'm a very impulsive type of person, I was spending money on things that I wasn't giving myself enough time to process or plan. So as I've got older, I've started to realize, actually, I don't need to have it all now. It doesn't all have to happen right this second. Like, I've got time. And I think it's purely just because I've worked on my own mindset, my own money personality, and all these other things that I've done along the way to make me see, hang on a second, I don't have to be a million miles a second. It doesn't have to happen like that anymore. So yeah.
That's amazing. So let's kind of get into how your journey as an entrepreneur started. Did you always know that you would be an entrepreneur, or was it something that maybe you stumbled into?
So this is really interesting because I became a doctor. So I'm actually still a medical doctor.
Nice.
And I hadn't always wanted to do that. So I perhaps got into that when I was about 16. A teacher happened to mention it and said, I think you'd be really good at that because you're good at science. But before then, I'd wanted to be a teacher. And I also was very creative. So I'd make things to sell to other kids. I had like my own little mini radio show. I had a little magazine that my dad, bless his heart, photocopied for me so that I could give it out to my peers. And I'd forgotten all of that. And I'd forgotten it all through being very academic and teachers sort of seeing there was an opportunity with me. And she said, no, you're too smart to be a teacher. You need to do something else. Maybe you should become a doctor or something. So it wasn't even really my dream. It was somebody else's plan for me. And I just kind of went along with it because, people were paying me attention and it was really exciting.
Right.
But it was only until I really burnt out from my medical stuff that I then realized, hang on, this is not really what I'm enjoying. I really miss the creative side of my life.
Right.
And knew at that point, right, I have to do something outside of medicine. This has to happen. So I rearranged my medical career to fit space for me to build a business. And this is where I became a money coach.
Wow. So how long ago was that transition?
So when I turned 30, so I'm 37 now, so 7 years ago, I had a bit of a kind of early midlife crisis coming on.
It can happen.
And that was the burnout period. It was I can't do this anymore. I'm working too many hours for what reason in something that I don't really enjoy.
Right.
and took some time out. And it was during that time off that I realized how bad my money situation was, how lost I felt with the direction I've been taking in my life,
Right.
all sorts of things. So yeah, I needed that time off to do that with, though.
I bet. And you speak about experiencing burnout, and that's real. I'm sure not only as a medical doctor, burnout is real, but even being an entrepreneur, you can experience burnout. And I'm curious, are there any lessons that you took from the burnout you experienced as a medical doctor, to kind of help you, navigate the burnout of being an entrepreneur? If so, what are some of those lessons?
Oh, I think taking breaks was the biggest thing that I learned from that, because it's very, very easy to just keep working, not taking any breaks, not taking any holidays. And I had a lovely piece of advice from one of my supervisors who said, Nikki, you need to be taking a break every 12 weeks.
Mm.
Doesn't matter what it is, you've got to do something, go away, go on a holiday, whatever, but you've got to do it every 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that to heart, quite literally, and now make a plan every 12 weeks in my calendar to have some time blocked out. And even in my day now, it's taken me a long time to learn this lesson, because I have struggled as an entrepreneur with the overworking stuff. But now I've got space in my diary to exercise and to have lunch, and then I'll finish at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and then I'll just accept that not everything got done, and I'll roll it over to the next day. So I'm not burning the candle at both ends.
So I'm curious, what does your daily planning look like? Is it something that you plan the day of, the day before? What does that look like for you?
So I have like a yearly planning session. So before January comes around, I'll sit and I'll work out, okay, what do I want to try and achieve this year, and what sort of major launches do I want to do, and things like that, and when do I want my holidays to be, and try and have a rough framework that 9 times out of 10 never goes to plan, but I do what I can.
Gotta love life.
Honestly, it never fails. And then on a kind of monthly basis, I'll have an idea about roughly what kind of theme do I want to talk about this month, if some of the big topics. And then I'll have weekly sessions on Monday where I'll actually sit and plan all my social media for the week, and sit and work on those. So it's kind of broken down in chunks like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what led you to operate in the finance and the money space after being a medical doctor? Why did you choose that route?
It was mainly out of the fact that I was so bad with money. So I had to do a lot of learning about my own money mindset, how I was managing money. Even to this day, I still have to catch myself in the old way of thinking and the old way of behaving. And when I came back from my period of time off after my burnout, I couldn't unsee it with my patients, with my colleagues. Suddenly, I could see money problems everywhere, stress, anxiety, people breaking their bones and then not being able to take time off because they hadn't planned financially for it, people that don't have enough in their pension pots. There's all sorts of things that have really big health implications. So I started to write as the female money doctor in a blog about my experiences. And then it kind of grew from there. And somebody said, oh, you're a doctor, why don't you become a coach? And that had not even crossed my mind about becoming a coach. So then that was something I explored and did some coaching qualifications, and just really enjoyed applying my medical side with my financial side and sort of merging them together.
That's amazing. And that actually brings up the question. And give us one example of how the medical side merges with the money side.
A lot of my analogies and a lot of the way I explain things tends to go back to medicine. So, for example, with compounding. So how compounding is how money makes money over time. And we want compounding to go into our favor so we can build wealth. We don't want it going against us, which is what happens with credit cards. And we know this because when we look at our statements, if we haven't paid the money off, it just keeps getting bigger, right?
Right.
So the way I explain it is money making money babies. So in my past, I was an OBGYN, so an obstetrics and gynecology doctor. And that to me just makes sense. It literally is money making more money, but it's money making money babies. So that's an example of like some of the things I might use.
I like that. I definitely like that. Yeah. So with that in mind, kind of going back to the entrepreneurship piece of it, how was that like? What were you apprehensive diving in and starting your own business. What did that look like when you made that transition? From a feeling perspective, I guess, is the question that I'm asking. Like, how did it make you feel making that transition?
Oh, I was very scared. I mean, I haven't fully broken away from employment yet. I'm still working part-time as a doctor. So when the day comes that I'll have to decide, what am I doing? Am I staying as a doctor or am I carrying on with the business? Will be a scary one. But the transition from even just thinking that I could be a business owner was hard enough in itself. And actually, it took a coach to say to me, what came before medicine? And that's when all the memories came up of me being younger and selling things and making things. And I suddenly realized that my desire at the age of 6 or 7 to be creative and have something that I can share with other people was there way before wanting to become a doctor. And that was only because somebody had suggested it. So that was a real unlocking point for me. And I suddenly realized that as a doctor, I could run a business. And then all of a sudden, I saw all these other doctors with all these other amazing businesses and met loads of them in America as well.
Wow.
And it was just awesome. It took me to have that perspective shift to then suddenly see other people that were in a field that I wanted to be in.
Right. Now, there was something that you had mentioned earlier with regards to how you kind of got into medicine, which was more so by someone else's urgings as opposed to a dream of your own. And once you came to that realization where you knew, like, okay, I'm going down a path that somebody else envisioned for me and I didn't necessarily envision for myself, how did you process that, knowing that it wasn't something that, was birthed within yourself?
I look at it with gratitude because nothing I've ever done is ever wasted. And I've made some big whopping mistakes in my past. And this being a doctor is not one of them. It's not a mistake. It was just, it's helped me with confidence. It's helped me with doors opening. People see the doctor bit in front of your name and you get immediate respect. Which sometimes you don't feel like you do when you're actually, dealing with patients all day.
Right.
But actually you do genuinely outside of medicine get more respect as a doctor. So, and I suppose I can't ignore the fact that I get paid well to be a doctor as well. It's not without its financial rewards. So I've got a lot of gratitude for it. And I think if I hadn't gone down that route, perhaps I wouldn't be where I am today. In fact, I've got no idea where I'd be today, but hey, it's, everything happens for a reason. And I think being a doctor was part of my journey.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, it gives you a unique selling point to your customers because you see things differently, right? Like the fact that you have spent years studying medicine and then you now are bringing that knowledge that you've gained into the field of finances and money management. I can only imagine the value that you're able to add to your clients and your customers because of that. So yeah, that's such a unique selling point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one thing that people are really shocked about when they realize that I'm not from a financial background. And I'm glad that I'm not, because it means then I can explain things in a way that comes from somebody that is not a financially orientated person.
Right. And you talked a bit about your money mindset. What did that process look like? When did you start to change your money mindset or even realize that you needed to make some changes to it?
So the very first book that I read in this kind of field on personal development and money was Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I know so many other people that have read this book, and it literally changes people's lives. It's incredible. And I think that was the first mindset shift I had. Okay. It was this is why it's been going so wrong for me over these last several years. So when I realized that actually this is not how the wealthy do things, and the wealthy do things like this, it led me to the idea of investing. It led me to the idea of entrepreneurship. It had so many spokes that came out of that. Just that one book. And if you've never read it, I highly recommend any of your listeners to read it, because it's seriously life-changing.
It is. Like, that's definitely one of those books that you have to read. Like it has to be on the must-read list for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you say were some of the major shifts that you had to make within your money mindset?
So the first one is to stop paying for things in credit. Okay. It's okay to have credit for things that are like, if you know that you're going to use your degree for something. So if you're becoming a doctor, you need a degree in order to become a doctor. You can't become a doctor in any other way, not in the UK anyway.
Mhm.
It's changing, but at the moment you have to have a degree.
Right.
So spending money on stuff like that, spending money on a house that you want to purchase, this is all debt that's really useful. But I was using debt in a way that wasn't useful and was actually causing more problems for myself. So I was buying clothes with it, I was going on holidays with it, I wasn't paying it off in full every month, and it was just causing me more issues. So I had to really have a shift around good debt versus bad debt and how to use that properly to my advantage. I also had to shift the idea of saving money and having money sat in an emergency fund doing nothing. That blew my mind when I first read about that. And it sounds so obvious now, but at the time I was like, what? I have to have money that I don't spend? Like, what is this trickery? You know, I thought it was really weird. So I had to really get my head around the idea of not having, not touching these savings, basically. And then I suppose well, there's two more. The third one was around budgeting. So actually having a budget every month that doesn't need to be rigid, it can be flexible, doesn't have to be perfect, but I need to be directing money rather than it just flying out the door, because I had no idea what was going on with my money, whereas now I know exactly where everything goes. And then the fourth one was investing. I really had to get my mindset around that. And women, unfortunately, are lagging behind men when it comes to investing for themselves. We're much more likely to save and put money into safer things. But actually, there's a real gap in retirement savings for women versus men. And we actually need, they think, around 7% more in our pension funds because we live that little bit longer than men. So we're not only lagging behind, but we're also lagging behind what we should be, which is more advanced than that. So I really had to get my head around investing and being okay with risk and putting money towards things that, you know, I know sometimes loses money and sometimes gains money, but that's the thing that you have to play.
Right. And when you talk about impulse and impulse buying and just being impulsive in nature, how have you kind of like reined that in a little bit so that you are more mindful and conscious when you're making purchases?
Yeah. So it doesn't always work. I will caveat that. But what I've done is I've separated my bills from my spending for the general spending on whatever I want. So I call this my fun fund. And this is literally a separate card that has a little bit of money transferred to it every single month. And I can blow that however I want. You know, if I want to go out with my friends, I can. If I want to buy some clothes or something with it, I can. The money's there for that, and it's not, I don't touch the bills account as much as I possibly can. Now, some months you might go over that amount that you give yourself, and sometimes you go under that amount a little bit, but the idea is it roughly evens itself out. So that's one of the first things that I did that really helped me. But the next thing when we get an impulsive urge to spend, it's usually subconscious, and there's usually something about our subconscious mind that wants to jump into it. So it's, you know, it looks like it's going to be fun, or it's done out of fear, or something like that. So if you give yourself some space to think about it first before you buy it, be that 48 hours for a small purchase, a whole month for a big purchase, then that immediate urge has gone away and it allows your brain to re-engage. So that's one of the things I really have to watch for, is the impulsive fear-based spending, or the impulsive, oh, just because it's Friday I want to go and spend. Well, actually, no, hang on a second, have you got the money this month to do that? No, I haven't. Okay, so it's like parenting yourself around money a little bit, but yeah, they're the two main things that I've done personally to help with my impulsivity.
Oh man, I can relate. Both of those strategies I have implemented as well, and it definitely helps. I have found so much value in having a separate debit card that I use solely for what I like to call my guilt-free spending, where I don't have to feel guilty if I buy anything from there, because I know it came from a percentage of my earnings that was solely set aside for me to spend as I choose. So it's really helpful when I want to go out and even if it is in some cases an impulsive purchase, I know that I shouldn't have any guilt because I spent it with that money. If anything, feel guilty because you can't spend it on something else later. But that's where the second piece of the puzzle that you were talking about comes in, where I weigh certain decisions if I'm able to think about them consciously and be like, will I want this a week from now? Will I want this in a month from now? And I'm like, okay, if I really want it bad enough, let me make myself wait X amount of time. Whether it's like, okay, let me come back to this next week. And if I want it just as bad, I'll get it next week. And, usually what will become like a red flag is if it's something that I've told myself I'm gonna wait, but then I'm finding myself like constantly thinking about it. I'm like, now, why can't I let this thing go? Like I said, I'll come back to it in a week. And then I'm like, is it because I really, really need this or I want it? Or is it because this thing just has a draw on me? So yeah, those are definitely some very helpful ways to overcome impulse spending. And I can definitely relate to that. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing yours as well. It just goes to show you, doesn't it, that even though you might look like you have it all together on the surface, you do still have to do things beneath it to make sure that you don't, go into the areas that you don't want to go into. So yeah.
So true. So true. And with that in mind, as you were making that transition into entrepreneurship and even along your journey of being an entrepreneur, what have been some of the limiting beliefs that you are either currently or have had to in the past overcome?
Okay, so one of my big ones is around charging people.
Okay.
Because I come from, so in the UK, we've got a nationalised health service. So it means that we pay into our taxes and our taxes will fund the health service. And when we go and see a doctor, we don't have to pay for it. So there's there is insurance, but everybody is under this nationalised scheme. The insurance is kind of just as if you want to get seen quicker, you can use that.
Okay.
So when I started running my own business, for me, the idea of coming away from everything being free at the point of contact to I actually have to charge people for this felt really uncomfortable. And that to me still feels uncomfortable, particularly when you've got things like the cost of living crisis going on. You just want to help everybody.
Right.
But the problem is if you don't then charge what it's actually worth, people don't value it and then they don't get anything out of it. And then it's very easy for somebody to just kind of ignore what you've done. So a lot of freebie seekers won't even look at the freebie they've downloaded. And I know I've done it myself, I've not looked at them. So I have really had to learn to charge what I'm worth. And I still struggle with that now. I'm better. I'm definitely a lot better. But when I first started, I was charging stupidly low amounts for things. And I just have to learn that people will pay for it if they value it. If they don't value it, then they won't pay for it. So the people that I'm attracting are the ones that I want to attract. Not everybody is my customer. And I offer things that are really free, things that are really cheap, and then things that are more expensive. So there's something for everybody along that journey.
Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have struggled with is either one, getting to a point where you charge at all for your service, or two, charging those higher amounts where it's like, man, would somebody really pay me this in order to do X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
And you come to find out if you're willing to take that chance that yes, the right person, the right customer or client will definitely pay you. And oftentimes it's just that hurdle of getting over ourselves to get to that point where it's like, okay, I feel comfortable, receiving money in exchange for the valuable service that I'm providing for somebody.
Yeah. And it's so important as well, because if we don't receive, we don't close the loop. So if we're constantly giving, our energy, our time, everything is just seeping out of us. And that's a recipe for burnout. And it's precisely the thing that happened to me the first time round, because I was giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and not replenishing myself. So it's the same for entrepreneurship. You have to work hard, of course, but you also have to look after yourself. And one way of looking after yourself is by charging what you're worth.
Yes. And it's so interesting as you bring that up, because last week I just finished reading the book, The Go-Giver. And essentially the principle is about giving. And the more you give to people, the more you can expect opportunities and things to open up for you. Yeah. The last principle that was explained in the book was the ability to be able to receive. And it's like you mentioned, it's kind of like that counterbalance where it's like, yeah, you want to give as much as you can and add value and have impact on other people's lives. But all of that is for naught if you are not willing to allow other people to give to you, which means you have to be willing to receive. And being receptive is just as important as giving. And, that principle kind of comes right back into play with what you were saying.
Yeah. And women in particular need to make sure that they pay attention to that, because we are so giving. And I mean, whether that's nurture or socially constructed, whatever the argument is around that, we are giving people, we are giving individuals. We want to look after our kids and our family above anything else. And then we're like on the bottom of the pile somewhere. But actually, if we can learn to bring ourselves to the top, we can then help so many more people, because we're going to be happier, more rested. We've got the money to be able to go on holidays and do the things that we want to do. So yeah, it's really important that we do put ourselves first, even if it does feel selfish.
Yeah, but it's so necessary. It's so necessary. So, with that in mind, when you look at your role of being a money mentor, what do you enjoy most about that? What do you like to, I'll just leave it at that. What do you enjoy most about being a money mentor for women?
I think it's when somebody is inspired to make changes. So, when they are inspired to get out of debt or start investing for the first time or rack up the money they need to buy their first house, and they actually do it based on something that I've taught them to do, it's the best feeling in the world, honestly. And yeah, you can get this stuff from lots of different sources, and that's great. And we don't operate in silos, do we? We operate as a community. But when somebody hears your voice saying it, and they've had that message again and again and again from loads of other people, but actually you're the one who has got through to them. Oh, it's just awesome. I love it.
Yes. And I'm curious, working with your clients, what would you say are some of the main things that they come to you for assistance with?
Well, a lot of the time it's because they feel completely in a mess with money, and it makes them feel stupid, because they're very intelligent women. They know what's going on with their workplace. They've got their family all sorted out. But when it comes to money, it just makes them feel small and like a little girl. And I think what a lot of women just need is a bit of clarity around what's going on with their money, reassurance that what they're doing is good. They've got a money personality to fit in a style that will help support their finances.
Right.
And actually, once they learn some of the basic concepts, it becomes easy. It's just skills to learn to be able to organize these things. But the other part of it as well is investing for our futures. So a lot of women will come to me and say, oh my God, I've done nothing for my future. I need help with this. So I'll teach them how to invest so that they can start building their retirement fund.
That's good. That's good. And looking at our audience, content creators, aspiring entrepreneurs, I'm sure that there are people out there who have a desire to be a coach one day. And some people often talk themselves out of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what you've been sharing, you took a situation that you dealt with personally with the struggles that you had with finances, and you educated yourself, became educated, and then realized, hey, like I can help other people to get out of the situations that I was in by imparting this knowledge, this wisdom, and also coaching and mentoring them through the process. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's pretty much it. And I think it's so easy to look at other people and think, oh, I'm not as good as them, I could never do that. That's imposter syndrome raising its ugly head. But actually think about all the amazing experiences that you've got that have led you to this point. And what is so obvious to you is not obvious to someone else. And it took one of my mentors to say, I think it was like a group call I was on. She said, just because you're good at spreadsheets doesn't mean that everybody is. And it suddenly just clicked for me. And I thought, hang on a second, like I've really learned this stuff. Yeah, I could teach people this. So yeah, you don't have to hold yourself back because you think perhaps you're not good enough or you don't have enough knowledge. You totally do. If it's easy for you, it means you've got a lot of knowledge about it.
Right. And it's so interesting that you bring up that example, because I know for me, one of the main blinders that I'm aware of, thankfully, and it allows me to kind of work on it, is the inability to sometimes see the things that I'm good at that other people may not be as good at or struggle with. And to me, I often fail to identify those as assets or things that I can help other people with. And just recently, I'm in a program now to kind of help me grow my audience on Twitter. And as we were kind of having a session going through different things that we could talk about on our feed, I was sharing some of my experiences, and then the people was like, "Yo, why don't you talk about networking?" And I was like, yeah, like I mean, I talk to people, I connect with people, but I never even imagined like, yeah, somebody else might be interested in knowing, how do you connect? How do you get guests on a podcast? How do
Yeah.
you do these things? It just comes so natural to me in a sense that I wasn't even aware that that's something that another person would want to know. And I bring that up because I think oftentimes many of us struggle from that, just being unaware of our gifts, our strengths, and the things that
Mhm.
other people would want to know that seem to come easy to us or that we wouldn't even equate to being something of value. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's such a good example, because networking is not one of my strengths.
Mhm.
In the money personality world, I'm like, that's my least least strong one.
Yeah.
So actually, I value learning about that sort of stuff from people
Mhm.
like you that know how to do that, because to me, it's like a foreign language.
See, look, and further validation. See, like, man, it's amazing how these things work. And I think that that's why, and definitely let me know your thoughts on this. I think that's why it's important to have coaches and mentors when we're going along our journey. I know some people are apprehensive about making that investment, but sometimes you need people that can see things about you that you don't readily identify.
Yeah.
And it can definitely give you a boost along your journey. And you mentioned, people that have helped you along your journey. How valuable would you say it's been for you having a coach and a mentor along your path?
Oh, it's always valuable. Or even if you come away from something thinking, oh, I don't really feel like I learned a lot for what I paid.
Mhm.
Actually, you probably did. You just haven't found the situation yet where you can apply whatever it is that they've taught you. And
Right.
sometimes there are things you get taught that you don't use for years, and then all of a sudden it comes to you, and you go, oh yeah, I remember doing that.
Right.
So I love the accountability bit of it. So when you work with someone really well and you just gel,
Mhm.
I find myself wanting to show up for that person. I want to do the work. I want to get things done. And yeah, you're meant to be doing it for yourself, but also you kind of want to do it for the person as well. You want to make sure that you're pleasing them,
Yes.
typical pleaser. But it helps because then it keeps you on track and it keeps you accountable. You're doing the things that they tell you to do. And that's the only way that you kind of build your business, by
Mhm.
actually following the path of someone that's already done it before, who's got the knowledge to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. And for those people out there who are tuning in who desire to get into coaching, what would you say are the things that are required to take the things that they learn, take their expertise, and then turn that into a successful coaching business?
Well, you need to have people that are willing to pay for the thing that you want to teach or coach them in. So what I would say is start testing the water a little bit and actually finding people that you want to coach, because not everybody is your coachee.
Mhm.
You're going to need to narrow that down. Is it women? Is it men? If it's women, well, it's not all women, is it? Is it women that are at the start of their careers? Is it women who have just had babies? Is it women that are going through the menopause? There's different women with different niches and different needs for different ages. So you kind of have to narrow it down. You don't have to narrow it down so much,
Mhm.
but it's just giving yourself a bit of an idea. And you only really learn that by actually coaching people. So if you offer to do some free coaching sessions for people and you realize, oh, I really didn't like coaching that lady because it was all about menopause, and actually I really wanted to do about fitness, well, then you've got your answer then, haven't you? You've started the momentum going. You don't necessarily have to have qualifications to start doing that, just a
Mhm.
desire and a group of people that are willing to learn from you.
Mhm.
And then you might want to get coaching qualifications down the line. So I didn't start off with coaching qualifications. I started off with my blog
Okay.
and then started coaching people bit by bit, and then got my coaching qualification. So I got a few different things that really interested me. And I still stand by that being the way forward. You don't have to, procrastinate and get all these amazing qualifications before you've done anything. You actually need to
Right.
get your hands dirty and get in there and start helping people. So
Mhm.
I'd say it's taking action. It's getting out there and actually finding your people and starting to do it. And even if you're starting off doing it for free, eventually you can start charging, and then you'll get more confidence doing it that way.
Yeah. And let's kind of go through some of the actions or the things that we would recommend for people getting started to do. So kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, I think knowing your audience is extremely important.
Mm.
Aside from that, I would say I think if you are a content creator, which most of the people tuning in are, continue to build your audience. And I would say in addition to building your audience, you want to be able to identify a problem that your audience has that you have a solution to. And I think that that's the first gateway to doing what you were
Yeah.
recommending, Dr. Nikki, which is offer some free coaching sessions and do it solely based on that one issue or a couple issues that they have expressed they have problems with. And then you know that you have a solid solution that you can walk them through. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you'll find is the same things will come up again and again, particularly if you've narrowed your group of people right down.
Mhm.
So if you know that I'll take the menopause thing as an example.
Yes.
If you know that there are a lot of women who really struggle with deciding whether or not to go on supplements or vitamins, or whether they want to go down the full HRT route, that might be a question that comes up again and again. You think, right, okay, what can I create that could serve those people? What do they need? What are the things that they keep asking me?
Mhm.
um yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I developed what I was doing. I realized that there were some things that were just being asked again and again and again, and it was all around pensions and investing. And so the first thing I created was around pensions and investing.
Nice.
And then it kind of grew from there when I realized, actually, hang on a second,
Mhm.
people are coming into investing, but they haven't freed up enough money to be able to invest properly, or
Right.
they don't know where their money's going. So they've got all this money leaking out that actually could be used for their investing.
Mhm.
And then after that, realized actually there's a big mindset problem here. Like, people are doing the budgeting and they're doing the investing, but they don't earn very much, or
Yeah.
getting themselves into debt again and again. Like, what's going on here? So it kind of grew from there. I
Mhm.
started off with the most obvious thing, and then kind of that's what people want,
Mhm.
and then you go to what do they actually need.
Right. Right.
And then I realized that there was some more to it than just the shiny object, which is the investing bit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Getting to the heart of it. And oftentimes that's not what's going to bring people in. It's that main immediate need that they have, that problem, that issue. That's what you want to address. And I think that sometimes when it comes to like the marketing piece of it, people can focus too much on, what they know is the solution. But if the client doesn't acknowledge that that's what they need to solve the problem,
Mm.
then your marketing isn't going to have the same effect. So it's really important, I would say, is not only just creating the content, but actually engaging and having conversations with people that are in your audience, because then you can see how are they phrasing things? What is the language that they're using? And
Yeah.
then when it comes to, marketing your services or your product, that's when you want to use that same language. So they were like, yo, man, you speaking my language. Like, you
Yeah.
totally understand exactly what it is that I'm going through. And I think that a really good way to kind of open up that door for those who are new to getting those first free coaching clients is to identify the problem like we talked about, and then look at your solution and see if it's possible to break it down into at least 3 steps. And then what I would recommend is do videos if you're on YouTube, do podcasts if you're a podcaster, do blogs, put out social media content, whatever your space is, wherever you're creating content. Just focus in on that one step, that first step to that problem, and put out content, and pay attention to the people who comment, pay attention to the people who slide in your DMs who want more help with that one thing. Once you show that you can get them through step one, then hey, you can say, hey, there's more steps to this. If you want to learn more, slide in my DMs, leave a comment. I'm happy to do that. And then that's one way that you can open that gateway up where people will start to come to you for the coaching. And that actually may be a position where you don't necessarily have to do it for free, because if you set it up the right way and they're coming to you, they're going to expect that it's not just going to be a free service. So that's
Mm.
just an idea that I wanted to go out there. What's your take? Anything that you would add to that, Dr. Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's something you could do. I mean, it's just whether or not your mindset will allow you to do it.
That
So,
right
you know,
there.
if you're somebody that really struggles with the whole self-worth piece, you're
Mhm.
probably going to have to work on building your confidence first before you start
Yes.
charging people. But
Mhm.
saying that, if you can charge somebody $10 or $20 for a session
Mhm.
and tell them, this is a super low price and it won't be like this forever, but I'm doing this because you're one of my first clients,
Right.
then that might be a way of doing it. And yeah, okay, that's still massively low for the value you're going to give that person, but it might give you the confidence to say, right, okay, well, I did it for $20. What about if I charge $50 next time?
Right.
And and so that's how I did it. I built mine up gradually, and I started off by offering a few things for free,
Mhm.
and then I started charging after that. And I have to take a deep breath when I say these things sometimes, but you feel the fear and you do it anyway, as the book says.
Yeah. And I'm curious, do you think kind of like a good workaround for people who are apprehensive about saying this is how much I charge is using something like Calendly, right? And setting up a meeting where a person has to pay. So then you can just say, hey, if a person is interested, yo, here, you can book a time on my calendar. And then that way you don't really have to sell them. But when they go to the page, they see, oh man, it costs $10 or $25 or whatever you're charging just to get started for this meeting. And then the next thing that you know, oh man, meetings are being booked and money is coming in too. And it's like, yo, I didn't even have to hard sell anybody. So that's one idea that I would think of if a person kind of wants to still present the selling piece, but out doing the hard selling themselves and saying, hey, this is what I charge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one way of doing it, and I completely agree that it's something that I think a lot of people would try, but you still have to sell it on your page.
Yes.
So even if someone was going to buy it on your Calendly,
Mhm.
you still have to have something on the page that overcomes their objections as to why they should be spending money on this, overcoming their self-worth, where they won't spend money on themselves because they don't believe they're worthy of spending money on themselves. You've got to show them that it's valuable to work on themselves. So there's sometimes having the conversation in person is a lot easier because then you can address the individual concerns. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's still possible to do that. I just think you have to be really, really good on your copy on your website or whatever you
Right,
use.
right.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, when I was thinking of that idea, I was thinking more so about people that were coming in as either like warm or hot leads, where they saw your
Yeah.
content and then they come in the DMs and they're asking you like, hey, I would love to learn more about that. Is there any way that we can, talk more or, work with me with that? That's more so what I was thinking. But you're right. If it's like a total cold lead, I don't think
Yeah.
that that's going to work. You'll definitely have to, as you mentioned, address the objections, also point out the value that your coaching services are going to have. And
Yeah.
I totally recommend having that opportunity to speak with them one-on-one as well. So
That's
yeah,
it.
that's a really good point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and it's good. You have to recognise that there are cold, warm, and hot leads, and
Mhm.
that was something that completely escaped me when I first started.
Mhm.
I had to learn that concept and realise
Mhm.
that marketing needs to be different for each of those different people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It can be a challenge. There's so many different pieces to the puzzle. But the one thing that I'll say is for people who want to get into coaching, it's definitely a viable way to start monetizing your content and your services and kind of getting your feet wet. It's totally up to you, like how big of a splash you want to make when you do it. But I think that it's definitely a viable way to monetize your expertise. And
yeah.
with that in mind, let's talk about actually kind of delivering on that. What would you say are some of the challenges that new coaches have to be aware of once they do get that first client, whether it's for, a free session or whether somebody has paid for their service? How can they walk into that first meeting with confidence?
Oh, so having something you want to say ahead of time, I think will be really helpful. So preparing,
Mhm.
what do you want to get out of that first session? And it's not about you, it's about the person that sat in front of you. And actually, I think that can really help to take the nerves off a little bit because you're not focusing on yourself. And, all the time you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, am I saying the right thing? Am I
Mhm.
doing the right thing? And they're thinking that this is worth it. All of that time, you're away from your client, you're not doing your job. So whenever you start getting caught up in those feelings,
Mhm.
focus on the person in front of you and have yourself like a little prepared crib sheet in front of you of questions that you want to ask. It's easy when you're doing it online, a
Mhm.
bit more tricky in person, but
Right.
I don't think it matters if you've got something there beside you, even if it's just like an onboarding questionnaire that you
Mhm.
do for every single client. The first session, I'm going to ask these 10 questions, and that's going to form the basis of the next however many weeks of coaching we have together.
Right.
So I think that can help with confidence. That's something I used to do when I was training as a doctor. I used to have a little crib sheet of questions in front of me because I used to forget what to ask the patient. So I don't think that's any different when you've got a client for the first time.
No, that's helpful. That's really helpful. And when it comes to being a money coach, right? Let's say there's somebody out there that's like, yeah, I want to be a money coach just like Dr. Nikki. What would you say is necessary or required to be a successful money coach?
Well, every country will be different. So you have to be really careful about the rules that are set about certain things that you can talk about. So in the UK, for example, I can educate, but I can't advise. So I can talk about investing and what you could do around investing, but I can't say to somebody, right, you should invest in X, Y, and Z or whatever. So if you're going to do money, be careful that you're not overstepping boundaries. But equally, it might give you some confidence to do some money coaching education yourself. So you know, because money coaching is a bit different to normal coaching. So normal coaching is where you ask questions to the person and the person gives you the answers, and it's coming from themselves and it's all self-directed. Whereas with money coaching, you're doing a bit of that, but you're also doing some education as well. So if you need to educate and mentor somebody around what to do with their accounts, for example, then that's something you can mix together with your pure coaching. So it's helpful to have a little bit of knowledge around the difference. But I wouldn't say you have to necessarily have qualifications to start it, as long as your country is okay with that.
That makes sense. And another question that kind of comes up when I speak to different coaches is one-on-one versus group. Do you prefer one over the other?
Yeah, so I prefer group coaching because I like the dynamics of the group. So I like how everyone interacts, helps support each other. It just brings out that teacher in me.
Yes.
And I find one-to-one a little bit intense in that you've got that one person in front of you, and I find it difficult to feel like I'm doing a good enough job for them. And I know what I said about focus on the client, not on yourself. So it's something I struggle with too. Which is probably one of the reasons why I shy away from the one-to-one work. And I think more people can learn more about their finances when they are exposed to other people's methods of managing their finances. So for me, group coaching works so much better, but that's my own preference.
Nice. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you next with regards to your own business is, what would you say are some of the tools that help you to run your business on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, okay. So I've got my planner. That's the first thing that I use. My planner is like my Bible. So I know what's happening on what days, who I'm speaking to, what podcasts I'm doing, and also all my social media. So I have a spreadsheet as well that I use, but my planner is kind of the thing that I carry around with me, so that I've always got my appointments in front of me. But having things like Google Drive is really helpful, because then you can collaborate with other people and you can share things, and everyone has the same version that gets shared, and that's free. So you can have a free version of that really easily. Calendly I use for all of my bookings and everything. So I've got people that want to book in a one-to-one call with me, or they want a 15-minute session or something, they can do that. What other things I use? So I use a scheduling tool for my social media. So I use SmarterQueue, and that's really helpful. That's been really good at pre-batching and pre-scheduling content. So if I have a couple of days where I forget or I can't do it for whatever reason, there's always something that's coming out. The other thing that I use as well is Active Campaign for my emails. I used to use MailChimp. MailChimp's great, but I found it quite clunky and it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. So I mentioned Active Campaign, and it's been really helpful for automating things. So when people sign up for a freebie, they get a series of emails that go out automatically, and I don't have to think about it. And that also then helps funnel people into my planner or into one of my courses, or to book a call with me, and it just happens. So I just have to focus on the bringing the people in. I know that all of that's there dealing with people on the other side. So they're my kind of main things that I use. But along the way, I've added other things in, like when somebody buys, there's like a little pop-up on my website that shows that somebody purchased something. So I'm using a free version of it. It's not amazing. It hasn't got loads of features, but that confirmation bias that somebody has got, that, if someone's purchased this, it must be good.
Right.
It's, it really helps. So little things like that is what I've added along the way, but I've tried things and taken things out. So you always have to kind of review them, don't you? But I'd say they're my main ones that I go to.
One of the things that I believe really unlocks how successful we are in both life and business are our daily habits. What are some of your daily habits that you attribute to your success?
So pretty much every morning I sit down and I will listen to some affirmations, so abundance affirmations. I'll listen to a 5-minute motivational video, and both of these things can be found on YouTube, so you don't have to spend any money on them. I'll sit and write a gratitude bullet journal. So I'll write some things that I'm grateful for the day. And then I'll sit with my planner and I'll work out what's going to happen for the rest of the day. And I think for me, that just gives me that little bit of okay, this is what I'm focusing on for the day. These are my tasks I want to tick off. And it just helps me to stay productive. A lot of people comment and say, how are you getting so much content out? You're always online, you're always doing things. And it's because I do this. I sit every morning and I plan, right, today I'm going to do this week, this week's worth of content. I'm going to do this week's worth of content. I try and batch as much as I possibly can. I'm still not perfect at it, but I don't think anyone is. So
no. No, we're not perfect, not at all. And it's more so, like you had mentioned earlier, taking action. Like, that's the most important piece, is identifying the actions that you need to take on a daily basis to get you closer to reaching your goals, and just make sure you're committed to doing that on a consistent basis. Like, that's really what it boils down to. Man, Dr. Nikki, this has been such a great conversation. One of the things I wanted to do before I wrap up, like to play a fun little game with my guests. It's called Pick 3. The way it's going to work is I'm going to ask you to pick 3 random numbers. They'll all be between 1 and 16. Based on the question that you choose, there will be a question that I'll ask you that ties to that number. So whenever you're ready, let me know what your first number is between 1 and 16, and we'll dive right in.
Okay, I'm going to go with 7.
All right, number 7. The question is, if you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would change about your business and how you got started?
What would I change? Such a good question. I think I would be less stressed about it. Because it doesn't matter really if you're getting something out every day, every week, every month, as long as you're consistent. And I was stressing about, how many times a week should I post this, and what should I post, and how should I post it? But actually, all I needed to do was just stay consistent, just put things out there, see what works, and then do more of what works.
Yes.
Which is really easy to say and hard to do, because you just want to create, especially if you're a creative person, you just want to put things out there for everybody. But I kind of did too much. It was like splat what's going to land on the wall and see what happens. But actually now I'm much more careful about, okay, so I pay attention, like that one bombed, let's try a different one. That one worked really well, right? Okay, let's do a theme on that, and I'll try and rework that one that went really well. And that seems to be helping so far.
Oh man, that's so helpful. Analyzing how your content is performing and being able to make strategic decisions based on if it performed well, okay, cool, I can go in, let me put about, X amount of more pieces of content that's based around this. This is definitely something that my audience is engaging with. And you can know which things to say, maybe not throw it away, but just know that, okay, maybe let's see, I'll put this to the side and see if they are more engaged with this in a different season. Sometimes it can be seasonally why people are reacting the way they're reacting, or maybe you just need to, rework it a little bit. So I think that that's a great way to do it, is to not just put content out and do it consistently, which we should all be doing, but then actually taking the time to analyze how is each of those pieces of content performing.
And it doesn't matter if you're, some people on TikTok and things, they're saying, you've got to post 5 times a day, 10 times a day, or stupid numbers like that. No. Consistency doesn't mean 5 times a day. Consistency means I'll do 1 video a day, or I'll commit to 1 video 3 times a week or something. And that's fine. That's what works with your lifestyle. And you can't do what everybody else does.
Yeah. Because I think what people often miss, Dr. Nikki, and let me definitely know your thoughts on this, is I think sometimes people get caught up on the amount of actions, right? Whether it's a person posting X amount of times a day, X amount of times a week, or putting up this many videos, this many social media posts. What it's really about is just taking a very specific, consistent action over a long period of time. And the
Yeah.
reason why that has the power is because most people fail to do that. So to your point, if you can look at your schedule, all of the things that you have to balance in your life, and you know, okay, I can write one blog post a week, or I can record one video, or I can do one podcast. If you commit to just doing that and say, I'm going to do it for at least a year, you will be way ahead of the person that is putting out 5 videos, 5 blog posts, 9 social media different posts, because oftentimes those people will burn out. And
Yeah.
if you set a goal to take consistent action on something that fits in your schedule, you can avoid the burnout to a much greater degree than the people who are trying to do everything and be everywhere to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I've only really taken to heart in the last couple of years. So I would definitely change that about the start of my business.
Yeah. And it can be tough, right? Because the narrative that so many content creators are putting out is that you have to be everywhere, you have to do X amount of this. And as a new content creator, I can only understand how overwhelming it can be to think that you have to do so much. It's like, man, this thing is impossible. Like, how do I even get started?
Yeah. And I mean, for me, batching has been like the best thing,
Yeah.
and repurposing stuff as well.
Mhm.
Like videos can be repurposed all over the place. You can make carousels out of blog posts, and that's been a game changer for me, because it means if I've got, brain freeze and I can't figure out what to do one day, I can just go to an old blog post and repurpose it and turn it into something that's visually pleasing, or
Right.
turn it into a quick reel or a TikTok or something, and suddenly that one blog post has become 3 different things,
Mhm.
without me having to relearn or redo something.
It's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. So what is your second question between, or second number between 1 and 16?
4.
4. So the question is, if you woke up tomorrow with no business, what would you do?
I'd probably just carry on being a doctor, to be honest. No, you know what? I've learned so much in the last 5 years doing this. Things like content creation and organization, and how to kind of pre-batch things and stuff that people don't know, that I think
Yes.
that they know, but they don't know. So
Right.
actually, I'd go back to that principle again. What have I learned over these past 5 years that I can make a business out of it? Could I be someone's VA to start off with? Could I be a social media manager for somebody? What skills could I bring to the table to start a new business off?
Nah, that's good. That's good. And the last of your 3 questions, any number between 1 and 16.
Let's go with unlucky 13.
So 13 is, what is a gem that was shared with you that greatly impacted you or your approach to business? And then let us know who is the person that shared that with you or where you learned that.
Oh, okay. So one of my all-time favorite people in business is a woman called Denise Duffield Thomas. And she's written several books now, and her latest one is Chill and Prosper.
Mm.
And I've read it before. She had another version that had come out, and she's now reworked it. And hers is all around building a business that works for you, not you working for it.
Mm.
And it's all sorts of things like the pre-batching of content, and not having to post gazillion times a day because you're like, what your schedule says, oh, I can do 3 posts, not having everything perfect, delegating things. It's all about making your business as easy as possible. I mean, I was overcomplicating things. I had so many things to offer people, and confused minds don't buy. So of course I wasn't getting any sales. So I've now literally just reduced my offerings down to what I like to teach, what I want to sell, and that's it. So someone's going to buy one of those 2 things, or they buy nothing, and that's okay. So that's what I've learned as a massive gem from her, is how can you make your business as chilled as possible?
I love that. That is so dope. I'm definitely gonna have to grab a copy of her book. I appreciate you for mentioning it. And before we go, I want to hand the mic over to you. Are there any questions that you like to ask me personally, or any last or closing words that you like to leave our audience with?
So what are the mindset struggles that you still have with your business?
Oh man, I would say the biggest mindset shift that I have with my business sometimes is just questioning if I can achieve the things that I want to. And I know it seems kind of nuts, if I step back and I look at the things that I have accomplished, but there are certain goals and I can be putting in the work and taking the action. And it just seems like it's taking me so long to get there that
Mhm.
sometimes that thought just comes to my mind like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, did I
Yeah.
choose the right thing? Am I going to hit that goal? That would be to me one of those mindset things that I struggle with is just trying to affirm that I did make the right decision. I am on the right path. And if I continue taking consistent action, I will get to where I want to get. But I'd be lying if I said that I'm always confident that that's the case. Sometimes I really do have those doubts and those thoughts that question that ability to reach those goals.
I'm so glad you said that because I feel exactly the same.
We're in the same boat.
That's it. We're in the same boat, honestly. This is what you don't hear enough of online, isn't it? You don't
Mhm.
hear a lot of people talking about their doubts and their fears, and you hear the good stuff and when they've reached income goals or when they've made it to a certain
Yeah,
level, whatever. But you don't hear what happens if I want to quit?
yeah,
What happens if I want to pivot? What happens if this goes wrong? Or what if I don't meet my goals? Is that going to be me? Does that mean I'm a failure? Like, there's all these things that actually we do need to talk about more as entrepreneurs.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good question. Any others?
Um, so, what was the first thing you did in your business to set
Mm,
yourself
so
up?
So the first business that for me, entrepreneurship was something that I stumbled into. I think deep down, ever since I was a kid, I knew I always wanted to work for myself, but I did go that corporate route, took a leap of faith and, kind of walked away from that.
Mm.
And the first entrepreneurial thing that I stumbled into was doing voice work. And it was all through a connection that I had made with a previous podcast guest. They just happened to send me an email at that time, like, yo, have you heard about, this service? And I was like, nah, I haven't. So I went and checked it out and I was like, oh man, they're paying to just read articles. I don't think the site is still up now, but 7 years ago it was there. And I was like, well, let me try this. And I was
Mm.
like, man, I actually got paid to just record something. And that kind of snowballed into me learning about the site Fiverr. Put a few gigs up on there for voice work and stuff started to come in. And then I connected with another podcaster I knew who was into audiobooks. And then he taught me how to get into doing audible books. And I was just like, oh man, this is fun, like voice work. So that was like the first thing I ever did outside of, like corporate America, starting my own business and making some money on the side. I guess officially I would be more of a freelancer than an entrepreneur, but that was like my first foray into making money on my own without an employer.
Mm. And I think that gives you so much confidence, doesn't it, when you
It
realise
does.
actually I've got something to offer people here, and
Right.
they love that. And the other word that you used a lot was connect.
Mhm.
You're obviously very good at connecting with other
Mhm.
people, and just find opportunities will then find you because you've connected with the right person at the right time. And yeah, it's amazing what can come from that, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so funny because one of the things that, and they probably get sick of me saying it here on the show, but I'm always saying, like, to me, I truly believe that the true key to success is relationships.
Yeah.
In my life, when I look back at a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish, a lot of those goals that I've been able to reach, there's always somebody somewhere, either at the beginning of that journey or somewhere at the midpoint, that has helped me to get to that place.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why, like, I love podcasting. Like, to me, an ideal world is like I get paid to just do this, but I know that there's so much more to it. But I just enjoy this so much, meeting people such as yourself, hearing about your journeys, what things you're going through, the struggles that you overcome, and the successes that you've had. This is what I really enjoy, and not just, oh man, we just had one recording, that's it. But I try my best, and I'll be the first to admit I'm not always the greatest at it, which is trying to stay connected with my guests and not just being a podcast guest, but being somebody that, hey, if I can be of assistance to help you, I want to do that. And just keeping that connection, starting that friendship. To me, I really enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, and it shows. It shows you're very very good at interviewing people. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. With that being said, Dr. Nikki, are there any closing words that you like to leave our audience with?
Oh, I think if you're thinking about becoming a coach and you've got that little voice inside your head that's saying, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, let me tell you, you can. And actually, the people that have got that little voice inside their head is exactly the sort of person that we need out there as a coach. The people that don't have that voice inside their head are not the people we need. We don't need people with that kind of. So you're going to have to realize that voice never goes away. It doesn't matter whether you've got 1 follower or 10,000 followers, you're always going to have that little voice of doubt, and someone's going to catch me at some point and it's going to all go wrong. It won't. Your mind's just telling you that to keep you safe. So the book, another book that changed my life was the one by Susan Jeffers, which is the Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I 100% recommend you go and read that, as well as Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes.
Because the concept is simple. It's, you're going to feel nervous, you're going to feel scared to do something, but actually it doesn't matter. You still have to go out there and do it anyway. If you've got a vision that's so great that you want to pursue, then who are you not to? So There we go.
Oh, that's beautiful. And definitely let everyone know how they can get in contact with you, support you. If they want to hire you, how can they do that?
So my website is thefemalemoneydoctor.com. So you can come over and find me on there. I'm on all the socials at Female Money Doc mostly, or Female Money Doctor. So you'll find me on all of them, Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And I've also got my own podcast called Women. No, that's my Facebook group. My Facebook group is called Women Working Towards Money Freedom, but my podcast is the Money Medicine Clinic. And then like a series of like little 10, 20-minute podcasts, because being a GP, we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes max to see a patient, deal with their problem and sort them out. So I thought, right, I'll make a podcast that reflects the fact that I only have 10, 15 minutes with a patient. So it's like little topics that people can listen to. And I've been told they're binge worthy. So if you're interested, go and check that one out. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you have a great podcast, and I highly recommend anybody who wants to get their finances in order. You guys definitely need to subscribe, support, and show Dr. Nikki some love. But with that being said, it has been such a joy speaking with you. I appreciate you coming on the show. And if you're ever interested in coming back, it would be an absolute honor. Just thank you so much for everything that you share with us today, Dr. Nikki.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.